What's up, YouTube? Let's get on with Realpolitiks 3 Earth and Beyond. I have seen some of you would like to see some interesting tips about Realpolitiks 3, which I'm going to call RP3. So let's get on with it. Okay, in RP3, we have two different types of scenarios. We can choose in between standard and climate war. You can see here the description of both. This one is a regular campaign without additional crises, and here we have a huge wave of climate disasters will begin to rapidly increase an already growing pollution all around the world. What this looks to me, I haven't tried it. I have been very busy doing a couple of runs with different countries in standard, but what I see here is, if you remember in one of my previous videos of RP2, there is a scenario that you are in an apocalyptic world, which I think this is the climate war. So let's select the standard one, and here we have the country selection. So I'm going to explain a little bit what we have here. Interesting stuff here is that we can choose micro countries or micro nations. What do I mean by that? We have, for example, let me go to the map and I'm going to show you very quickly. We have a very small nation over here in the Pyrenees, which is called Andorra. We also have here Monaco. We have, actually, it is going to be very difficult to choose it here, but also in here in Italy, we have San Marino. Up in here in the Alps, we have this one, which is Liechtenstein, and a couple more. There is one that is going to be very interesting, which is called Nauru. This is a very weak small island, and an interesting fact about Nauru is that is perhaps, and it is listed if you do a quick Google search, you will see that it is listed as perhaps the smallest island in the entire globe. Nauru is located somewhere around here. Let me show you here. It is here. So Nauru, as you can see, it's very small. So for those that would like to choose a very interesting country, you can go and choose those. Now, Nauru, it exists also in RP2, but one thing that I really miss from RP2, if I'm not mistaken, is the fact that you can choose the Vatican City. In Realpolitiks 3, you cannot choose the Vatican City, so that is sad. So for this video guide, I'm going to use Belgium. Belgium is an interesting, beginner-friendly country, and also I would say that Spain would be one of those countries that is going to be beginner-friendly, including Sweden. Okay, with that being said, let me explain why Belgium is so important and why I think it's very interesting. Well, the first thing is that you're going to see here blocks. Now, the majority of the countries, they begin with the UN, which is a political bloc. This is the standard for most of the countries because in the 21st century, most of the countries are part of that. But Belgium, instead, it has another three, and it is one of the few that will present us with this variety of blocks in one single nation. So we have the European Union, which is an economic bloc, the NATO, which is a military bloc, and the Benelux, which is a social bloc. Now, I'm going to explain very quickly what are those in terms of the mechanics. The UN is a political bloc in which is going to give you a lot of buffs for all the countries that are members of the UN. Then the Benelux is a type of annexation bloc in which you are going to be able to annex every single country that is a member of the Benelux. It is a little bit like alternate history, but basically that is the whole point, right, of RP3. Then we have the NATO, which is going to be a huge alliance of all the countries that are members of the NATO and the European Union, which is going to be giving a lot of benefits and buffs and also extra actions for countries that would like to have exchange of resources in between them and in between the members of the European Union. So that is the reason in which I would say that Belgium is a very nice country to begin with. Now, here we have game modes. We can choose in between standard, overdrive, and sandbox. Now, overdrive is going to give you shorter cooldowns. That means that you're going to be able to implement a lot of projects and a lot of things more quickly. Countries start with additional resources and the starting political system can be changed. So if you go here, you can change it and you can completely create something different. And then you have the sandbox, which is a standard implementation times, which is the normal ones. And countries start with almost no technologies, and the starting political system can be selected as well. The only thing is that in standard, you're not able to change the political system. You are going to be stuck with the political system that is basically the real political system of the time period. However, if you go to sandbox, it is said that countries start with almost no technologies, and it is a little bit better because you can start balancing the countries at the same pace. What this means is that in standard, evidently the countries such as United Kingdom will have much more advantages against Belgium, and also in comparison, Greece will have much more disadvantages as to say a superpower like China or United States, which has a strength of 10 in comparison with Greece, which has a strength of 5. So that is pretty much what we have here. Difficulty is going to change what is the actual buffs. So you will have a buff in resources. So all countries will receive 30% fewer starting resources, and the player begins with 50% more resources. And basically hard is going to be the other way around. So that is in that regard. You have iron mode, which is an inspiration from the Iron Man from Paradox Games. And also we have without storing blocks. You can go here. You can also select the blocks yourself. So let's say that Belgium here, we don't want to be in the block of the NATO, but you go to overdrive and you can click here and take out the blocks. However, you can see that here in standard, you're not able to do that. But if you go without starting blocks, you will have no blocks and you will be able to choose your blocks as you go. Okay, another thing that is different from RP2 is that you are able to change the portrait. Here you can change the genre of your ruler. You can change basically the ethnical group. You have different options here, and you can customize your own name. So you can basically put yourself in here and be the actual ruler. I want to make this a very nice and condensed guide. I'm just going to assume that you have a little bit of understanding about grand strategy, and also I will assume that you have played the previous iterations. So as of right now, we have here the main screen. You can click in here and you're going to see the world. It is very nice because you can colonize other planets. Let us return here. When you are, for example, in here in the middle of the ocean, you can click the flag here and go to the capital. This is one of the tips that I'm going to give you. The other thing is that we have several interesting stuff that is not present in Realpolitiks 2 and Realpolitiks 1, and that is the destiny points, which was a new mechanic added here. We have also the influence and the stability. So if you want to know what are the notifications, you can go in here. This is a very interesting and very useful window that will help you to understand what are, for example, the countries with which you can declare war. The other important thing is that you would like to see here, if you don't want to see the colors, you click here the terrain view, but also you can click here and you will see all of the armies that are present in all of the map. This is here in show all armies. When you go and you select in the selection screen, you would load the country that you want to play with, and this is going to be randomly generated for you, all of these numbers here. Sometimes you will see deficit here, sometimes you will see a greater number here or a lesser number here, but that is all going to be related with the actual beginning of your match. When you go to the head of state as well, you are going to see that the leader is going to have different party allegiance. That is another thing. Here you can see the skills of the actual head of state. It is going to be dependent on the, let's say, the actual trait or the actual ideology of that head of state. In this case, he is patriot, and you will have defender of the nation, armed logistics industry, all of this. This is going to be very helpful because you are going to be increasing the skills, basically the skill tree of the monarch, especially if you are a monarchy, absolute monarchy, or a parliamentary monarchy. This is going to be very useful. Over here you see the ministries. This is pretty much all of the agents that appear on your country. Most of them are separated in between all of the parties here. You can select here and you're going to see different guys over here. First things that you are going to note in here that are very useful, this little guy that is sitting in a chair. This means that this guy is already assigned into one of the ministries that are part of your country. You can drag and drop these guys here, and you will be able to change and do any changes by a cost. And obviously, if you change most of the time, basically, if you change the actual main position, you're going to have a drop in stability. What is stability? Well, it is time to tell you that stability will give you effects on destiny points generation, HDI points projection, and influence pool generation as well. Why destiny points are important? You go to national heritage, and here you're going to see a some sort of technology tree. This is basically a lot of buffs that you're going to be able to unlock. So for example, making a mark is going to give you much more destiny points and AP income increases in percentage, and you're going to be doing things such as technological pioneer, commerce traditions. Each of these is going to give you different buffs into different areas, so to speak. So what I'm going to say is that it is very important for you to maintain destiny points very high. Another thing that it is useful to use the destiny points is when you go to projects. Let's say that we want to implement energy sector regulation. You have a slider here in which you can boost the implementation time, and depending on the amount of destiny points that you have, you are going to be able to cut down the actual time that is going to take to research that project. The best way to use the destiny points is basically going into your monarch or your leader, whatever, and use it in national heritage. This is the best way where you are going to be spending your destiny points. So take that into account. Influence is like the government capacity. So basically, the more points you have here, the more trade agreements you can have, the more things you can do, the more interactions you can have with other nations. Also, we have this thing here, the GDP. We know what is the GDP because of the previous iteration, but the GDP here, it works a little bit different. The next tip that I'm going to give you is about the GDP. So we're going to go straight to economy. Here in economy, you're going to see that we have different options. We have different parameters here. Inflation is one of the parameters that is going to be affecting, for example, in here. You can see that inflation, if you go down here, 9.3%, it gives you a penalty of 245 in the actual money. Another interesting thing about the economy window is that you can see here debt. Now, I'm going to talk about debt in here and how debt has a relation in between the GDP, and that is located down in here. You can see that it says the effects of debt depend on its amount relative to the country's total GDP. So let's say that the factors of the GDP is the HDI plus the debt plus the trade. Okay, now interesting thing about the tooltips is that you can hover over possible developments, and it is going to give you a hint in what type of buildings you can build in order to increase the GDP, and what type of projects you can research in order to also increase the actual resource that you are looking at. Okay, let's return to the GDP effects of the actual debt. So debt is good as long as you don't surpass the 150% GDP in comparison with your GDP. So what I mean by that is that if you have a GDP, let me show you here, of 689,000, this means that if we have 689,000 debt, which we don't, we have more, but if we have that, we are in the 100% mark, and this means that we're going to get a small bonus to the GDP growth, but we will have a small penalty to unemployment growth. So what this means, you can see it here in debt. It is represented in here in this window, and you can see that if you have a small debt, you are going to have unemployment of plus 0.02%, but a good bonus of 0.01% of GDP. If you have high debt, you're going to have unemployment of 0.04%, but you also will have growth. Now, dangerous means that you are surpassing the 150 mark, and it is explained in here. If you surpass the 150 mark, or you are going to be in a dangerous situation in terms of debt. Dangerous situation will increase further the unemployment and is going to start giving you penalties on the GDP. So you will have to be always trying to make sure that you balance the debt and make sure that you do not go into dangerous waters. Also, bankruptcy means that it is very, very well explained here that 200% of the GDP, meaning that if we have double this amount of GDP, that means 1,000,000.3. This means that we are going to be in bankruptcy, and bankruptcy will have a lot of penalties in terms of your financial health. So that is a good thing to take into account. If you go into debt, also you can see a lot of options here. You can see in debt management that we can issue 2-year bonds that is going to create an interest of 5%, issue of 4-year bonds 2.5%, and 6-year bonds 1.67 interest. Print money, which is going to increase the inflation. Then you have the option to fight inflation with a call down, actually, and this is going to reduce minus 2.5%, and you will see that inflation again is going to affect the amount of money that you get. You can also take loans. Loans are fixed. It's like you have this number and you cannot influence this number. So you can issue the loan, and if you click here, that's the amount of money that you will get. So this is going to be added to your debt. So this means that now at 770, if we add this 34, we are going to go and we're going to surpass into a dangerous level of debt. And then we have the possibility to buy stability points, and this is by issuing this invest in stability button here. So if we issue this, we are going to gain 1 stability point in here. This is the cost, but we're going to get inflation. You have to be very careful about inflation, because inflation, the more inflation you have, the less money you gain. And then you can pay the loan. Paying the loan is going to be very important, because you can in that way you can control what is the amount of debt that you have. Just to recap, the GDP growth is going to be influenced by the HDI, and also is going to be influenced by the debt influence. So you have to be careful not to be not in debt, but not to be also in a dangerous place. Okay, that is concerning the economy. Then we have here the politics. Here we can see a very interesting window in which you see the constitutional monarchy, that is the actual political system. We see the effects of the constitutional monarchy over here. You can click and drag. You're going to see the militarism, personal control, interventionism, religiousness, and conservative levels. This is going to influence what is going to be further the possibility for you to change the political system. Parliament is the traditional parliament that we already know about Realpolitiks. We see here election polls. This means what is the percentage of the polls concerning all of the parties. Now, right now, I'm going to show you here that you can ban. There is a possibility to ban. If you are not able to see the banning of the party, you can go to party banning, and here you can change banning forbidden. You can go to banning forbidden or unrestricted banning. Now, unrestricted banning, I'm just going to point out something interesting. It requires some conditions, and one of the conditions is that we must be either communist, theocracy, absolute monarchy, dictatorship, military junta, or fascist. That is reflecting evidently the fact that if we are a constitutional monarchy, we cannot go and say to everyone, go to hell and I'm going to do whatever I want. This is the reason we are not able to do that. We have to change first the political system to be able to select this one. But you can go and it is active, the extreme parties only. Some countries will not have this active. So this is the place where you can go and activate that. So with that, what I'm going to do is to show you the parties out of parliament, which are the extremists. Most of the things have tooltips that will tell you what is going to be the thing that is going to be subtracted from your resources. But here, sadly, in RP3, we don't have anything that will point us out what is going to be the thing that we're losing if we click this button. So be careful about that, because I'm going to click and ban the fascist party, and you're going to see that it took from the storage money a little bit of it, but it didn't told me. Then I'm going to do the same with the nationalist party, and it's going to take another amount here, and I'm going to ban the communist party, and it also took from action points and money. So take that into account. Now, by doing this, we are making sure that none of these guys are going to be able to be present on the government. Now, this is going to be much more effective if you are a republic, because the republic is going to change terms every 5 years. So this is going to be more effective in a republic if you don't want those ideologies to touch your country. So that is something to take into account. Then we have the projects. In projects, we have 2 different categories. This is something that they changed. They changed categories in projects, which are the brown ones, and the black ones are the research. You can do 1 research and 1 project at a time, as you can see here. Then you can see here that the projects are very varied in type, and you can see culture. You can go for academic freedom, you can go for school propaganda. The thing is that you have to be careful because all of these projects, they have project maintenance, which take money from you and take action points from this. So you have to be careful. You also have to be aware that the parliament votes, if you are some sort of a democratic nation, you will have to be sure that all the votes of the parliament are voting for the actual project. You can disable the project. The disable of the project will take out the effects, but also the maintenance. Okay, now I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to show you one of the most important windows that you will find in here, which is the economy window. The second most important is the province window. Province window is important because if you have a huge country such as China, United States, and Russia, you're going to have so many provinces that it is going to be very difficult. Let alone France, for example. You can see here that you have so many provinces that you will have to click each of them and deal with them. So at least in Belgium, we have Liège and Brussels. So we have only two, but it is a very nice window to take into account. Why? Because here we can control pollution, which is a mechanic here as well. We can control claimants. We can control which are the provinces that have all of the resources. We can also go to the building slots here, and we can add all of the buildings that we want, as you can see here. Let me talk about that in a few moments. We can also replace, let's say, shipyard, and we want to replace it with a hotel. You click replace. This is another thing that you can do. So very useful. Also, again, returning to economy, another way to take that window out is going in here. And here we can see a lot of good information about the economy and where are the expenses. Trust me, this is one of the most important windows that you're going to be dealing with in RP3. In here, as you can see, we see that this is dependent on each country. Obviously, small countries will have, for example, the bureaucracy expenses are going to be less relevant in small countries because you don't need too much bureaucracy expenditure in those countries. So if you reduce the bureaucracy, you're going to be good to go. If you're a small country, you will have a lot of maintenance paid to the block. But if you're a big country like Belgium, I mean, by big, I mean not size, but I mean, it's a standard one. You have 1.91% in block maintenance. But because of that, we have to be careful not to go low in the bureaucracy here. Why? Because you can see that the lowest we go in bureaucracy, the less action points we produce. So if we go very high, we have 10,000 points each month. And if we go medium, which was the one that we were at the beginning, we're producing 4,000. In this case, it is good to reduce the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is all of the payments that go to the actual ministers. So you can see here that is all of the payments to all of these individual people, so to speak. So this means that if in this case we know that Belgium, we want to have a little bit more of action points the next turn. So by turn I mean the next month, we just decrease it slightly and we're going to get less action points but more money, or we can go high and we will reduce the amount of money that we have here because we're paying more and we're getting more action points, if that makes sense. We can combine this by going up into the taxes so we can mitigate the amount of money that we're spending here. Or we can go and say, I really need money and I'm going to go high in here and low in here, and we're going to get 30k in one hit. So this is how you deal with the financial policies, which is very important for you to understand how this works. Military administration as well. You can see here how much of that it is here, 10.37%. So if we go like this, it is going to be refreshed right now, and that is military administration. It went now from 8 to 5.47. Now, military administration, you have to refresh it like this. Military administration is important because it means how much you are paying to the actual army. Now, talking about armies, you can see here one small slider here that says mobilization. Now, this is a little bit interesting because the slider means it works like a way of direct payment to the actual division, to every single unit that is inside here. So let's say that you want to reduce it. Evidently, this reduction does not appear. Even if I click play, it is going to be reduced slightly as the time goes by. As you can see, I'm just going to pause because I don't want that to happen. I just want this to go again in here. But as you can see, this is going to increase this, but again, you have to be clever about this, because if you go and see army maintenance, this is the actual army maintenance, and it is less than 1%. So it is basically irrelevant, the amount of money that you decrease or increase in here. Again, I'm going to go and hit play, and it is going to increase slightly over time. So you have to take that into account. It is very important. This is the readiness in which your armies are going to be at the time of a conflict. If you have very low budget for the actual division, the division is not going to fare well in combat. So another thing is that spies are present in here. So you have to click here and pay the cost of opening the counterintelligence department in order to be able to recruit agents, the diplomatic intelligence in order to recruit diplomats, so on and so forth. So you have to pay the cost to recruit them here. Here you can go to armies and you can go to recruitment, and here you can see different units that you have in terms of the actual infantry, the actual air. This is for the fleets. This is for recruitment conditions not met. This is for planetary units and stuff like that, satellites and stuff like that. The thing is that here you can buy it, and it is going to go to the training queue. You can click here and just stop the production of that particular unit. So this is how you do it in here. You can do it the same thing for planes and stuff. All of those are going to be added into these actual things that we have here. You can click here as well to promote officers to higher rank. So you will have colonel, and then you will have the general and the marshal, so on and so forth. The good thing is that you can, for example, choose this guy, and because we are part all of the NATO, so we can send this one to Germany. And if I give the order, this army to go here, it evidently is going to move into Germany without any penalties. That's the good thing about the bloc of the NATO, because this means that we are all having military access, so to speak. Okay, I think at this point, another important thing here is that you're going to see a decrease in HDI points every year. And this is because it says the HDI, it has an annual HDI modifier for the year. This means that the modifier is going to be changed every year. So it is going to be very important to go into the culture and education, most likely, because in here is where you're going to find the majority of the projects that are going to be helpful to increase the HDI. So for example, private education will increase the HDI +5, the research institutes +10. So it is always good to maintain the HDI very high if you want to also get the possibility to find yourself with another project and be able to get those projects. So for example, in economy here, I'm going to show you one project that is important. No, it's not in economy, it's in diplomacy. This project right here, you need this one, economic cooperation, you need at least 100 HDI to be able to do this. Now, another thing is going to happen if, for example, for some reason the HDI drops less than the required for the actual project. If you have this project active, for example, this is going to be, for example, dropped less than 100, so this is going to go inactive. Inactive doesn't mean that it's disabled. It simply means that it doesn't meet the actual HDI conditions, so it is not going to be active just by the fact that the HDI dropped. For example, this influence is, for example, I want to go here and I want to do a cooperation, economic cooperation. This means that for this, I will need, it says that it will take 10 influence from the 128. Again, it's the government capacity. So the more you have, the better. How do you upgrade this? So you are going to upgrade that by going into the national heritage and going up and unlock all of these amazing stuff that you're going to get here, especially the influence. The influence pool is going to be increased with national heritage. Another important thing are the tracked tasks. Here are going to appear tasks depending on the month that is going to be giving you buffs in for example, political to strengthen political views and ideology and stuff like that. I think that is all. Here you can disable anything that you don't need. So you can just click here and disable. And I think that is it basically, because the blocks are here. Depending on the block, you can select here and you can, by paying the cost, you can go and do different integrations. You can leave, you can kick, whatever. Obviously, in the Benelux, for example, if you want to kick Luxembourg, you are going to have a veto from Netherlands. So this is how it works. It works very similar to what it worked in previous iterations. For example, environmental pact. All of these nations are in favor. So you have 100% members that are voting. This means that we are for sure going to get this. And yeah, basically, I think this wraps everything up. So you can create here. This is another thing. You click on the province and you will see here what is the composition, ethnical composition. We can see as well by clicking here the province unrest, how many population, this and that. You can see as well, you can buy different slots, and you can also, as I said, going into these tabs and going into any building that you want. You can go for show unresearched or show unavailable. But if you just want to see what you can do, then you just uncheck those. I think that is everything that we have. Another thing, just before I forget, the NGOs here, I try to click, but it doesn't work. This is because we don't have NGOs. NGOs in RP2 are those, you can build them. You choose what is the province that you want to build them, but in here they appear randomly as the time goes by, and they appear in the form of events, and you can just accept them or not. And when they appear, you're going to click here and they're going to appear there. At this point, the only thing that I'm going to request is for you to give a like if you liked this guide, and also subscribe if you haven't done that. This was Victus. See you in the next one.